Chapter 10 of Book 2 of Prior Analytics by Aristotle. Chapter 10 of the same in the third figure. In the third figure, when the conclusion is converted contrarily, neither premise is subverted according to any of the syllogisms, but when contradictorily, both are in all the modes. For let A be shown to be with a certain B, and let C be taken as the middle, and the premises be universal. If then A is assumed not present with a certain B, but B with every C, there is no syllogism of A and C, nor if A is not present with a certain B, but with every C, will there be a syllogism of B and C. There will also be a similar demonstration, if the premises are not universal, for either both must be particular by conversion, or the universal be joined to the minor, but thus there was not a syllogism, neither in the first nor in the middle figure. If however they are converted contradictorily, both propositions are subverted, for if A is with no B, but B with every C, A will be with no C. Again, if A is with no B, but with every C, B will be with no C. In like manner, if one proposition is not universal, since if A is with no B, but B with a certain C, A will not be with a certain C, but if A is with no B, but with every C, B will be present with no C. So also if the syllogism be negative, for let A be shown not present with a certain B, and let the affirmative proposition be B, C, but the negative A, C, for thus there was a syllogism. When then the proposition is taken contrary to the conclusion, there will not be a syllogism. For if A were with a certain B, but B with every C, there was not a syllogism of A and C, nor if A were with a certain B, but with no C, was there a syllogism of B and C, so that the propositions are not subverted. When however the contradictory of the conclusion is assumed, they are subverted, for if A is with every B, and B with C, A will be with every C, but it was with none. Again, if A is with every B, but with no C, B will be with no C, but it was with every C. There is a similar demonstration also if the propositions are not universal, for A, C becomes universal negative, but the other particular affirmative. If then A is with every B, but B with a certain C, A happens to a certain C, but it was with none. Again, if A is with every B, but with no C, B is with no C, but if A is with a certain B, and B with a certain C, there is no syllogism, nor if A is with a certain B, but with no C, will there thus be a syllogism. Hence in that way, but not in this, the propositions are subverted. From what has been said then, it seems clear how, when the conclusion is converted, a syllogism arises in each figure, both when contrarily and when contradictorily to the proposition, and that in the first figure syllogisms are produced through the middle and the last, and the minor premise is always subverted through the middle figure, but the major by the last figure. In the second figure, however, through the first and the last, and the minor premise is always subverted through the first figure, but the major through the last. But in the third figure, through the first and through the middle, and the major premise is always subverted through the first, but the minor premise through the middle figure. What therefore conversion is, and how it is effected in each figure, also what syllogism is produced, has been shown. Chapter 11. Of deduction to the impossible in the first figure. A syllogism through the impossible is shown, when the contradiction of the conclusion is laid down, and another proposition is assumed, and it is produced in all the figures, for it is like conversion, except that it differs insomuch as that it is converted indeed, when a syllogism has been made, and both propositions have been assumed, but it is deduced to the impossible, when the opposite is not previously acknowledged, but is manifestly true. Now the term subsists similarly in both. The assumption also of both is the same, as for instance, if A is present with every B, but the middle is C, if A is supposed present with every or with no B, but with every C, which was true, it is necessary that C should be with no or not with every B, but this is impossible, so that the supposition is false, wherefore the opposite is true. It is a similar case with other figures, for whatever are capable of conversion are also capable of the syllogism per impossible. All other problems then are demonstrated through the impossible in all the figures, but the universal affirmative is demonstrated in the middle, and in the third, but is not in the first. For let A be supposed not present with every B, or present with no B, and let the other proposition be assumed from either part, whether C is present with every A, or B with every D, for thus there will be the first figure. If then A is supposed not present with every B, there is no syllogism, from whichever part the proposition is assumed. But if it is supposed that A is present with no B, when the proposition B, D is assumed, there will indeed be a syllogism of the false, but the thing proposed is not demonstrated. For if A is with no B, but B with every D, A will be with no D, but let this be impossible, therefore it is false that A is with no B. If however it is false that it is present with no B, it does not follow that it is true that it is present with every B. But if C, A, is assumed, there is no syllogism, neither when A is supposed not present with every B, so that it is manifest that the being present with every is not demonstrated in the first figure per impossible, but to be present with a certain one, and with none, and not with every, is demonstrated. For let A be supposed present with no B, but let B be assumed to be present with every, or with a certain C. Therefore is it necessary that A should be with no, or not with every C, but this is impossible, for let this be true and manifest, that A is with every C, so that if this is false, it is necessary that A should be with a certain B. But if one proposition should be assumed to A, there will not be a syllogism, neither when the contrary to the conclusion is supposed as not to be with a certain one. Wherefore it appears that the contradictory must be supposed. Again, let A be supposed present with a certain B, and C assumed present with every A. Then it is necessary that C should be with a certain B, but let this be impossible, hence the hypothesis is false, and if this be the case, that A is present with no B is true. In like manner, if C, A is assumed negative, if however the proposition be assumed to B, there will not be a syllogism, but if the contrary be supposed, there will be a syllogism, and the impossible demonstration. But what was proposed will not be proved, for let A be supposed present with every B, and let C be assumed present with every A, then it is necessary that C should be with every B. But this is impossible, so that it is false that A is with every B, but it is not yet necessary that if it is not present with every, it is present with no B. The same will happen also if the other proposition is assumed to be, for there will be a syllogism, and the impossible will be proved, but the hypothesis is not subverted, so that the contradictory must be supposed. In order, however, to prove that A is not present with every B, it must be supposed present with every B, for if A is present with every B, and C with every A, C will be with every B, so that if this impossible, the hypothesis is false. In the same manner, if the other proposition is assumed to be, also if C, A is negative in the same way, for thus there is a syllogism, but if the negative be applied to B, there is no demonstration. If however it should be supposed not present with every, but with some one, there is no demonstration that it is not present with every, but that it is present with none. For if A is with a certain B, but C with every A, C will be with a certain B. If then this is impossible, it is false that A is present with a certain B, so that it is true that it is present with none. This however being demonstrated, what is true is subverted besides, for A was present with a certain B, and with a certain one was not present. Moreover, the impossible does not result from the hypothesis, for it would be false, since we cannot conclude the false from the true, but now it is true, for A is with a certain B, so that it must not be supposed present with a certain, but with every B. The like also will occur, if we should show that A is not present with a certain B, since if it is the same thing not to be with a certain individual, and to be not with every, there is the same demonstration of both. It appears then that not the contrary, but the contradictory must be supposed in all syllogisms, for thus there will be a necessary consequence, and a probable axiom. For if of everything affirmation or negation is true, when it is, but let A be supposed present with every C. Therefore, if it is not present with every B, but is with every C, C is not with every B, but this is impossible, for let it be manifest that C is with every B. Wherefore, what was supposed is false, and the being present with every individual is true. If however the contrary be supposed, there will be a syllogism, and the impossible, yet the proposition is not demonstrated, for if A is present with no B, but with every C, C will be with no B, but this is impossible. Hence that A is with no B is false. Still it does not follow that if this is false, the being present with every B is true, but when A is with a certain B, let A be supposed present with no B, but with every C. Therefore it is necessary that C should be with no B, so that if this is impossible, A must necessarily be present with a certain B. Still, if it is supposed not present with a certain one, there will be the same as in the first figure. Again, let A be supposed present with a certain B, but let it be with no C. It is necessary then that C should not be with a certain B, but it was with every, so that the supposition is false. A then will be with no B. When however A is not with every B, let it be supposed present with every B, but with no C. Therefore it is necessary that C should be with no B, and this is impossible, wherefore it is true that A is not with every B. Evidently then, all syllogisms are produced through the middle figure. Chapter 13. Of the same in the third figure. Through the last figure also, it will be concluded in a similar way. For let A be supposed not present with a certain B, but C present with every B. A then is not with a certain C, and if this is impossible, it is false that A is not with a certain B, wherefore that it is present with every B is true. If again it should be supposed present with none, there will be a syllogism, and the impossible, but the proposition is not proved. For if the contrary is supposed, there will be the same as in the former syllogisms. But in order to conclude that it is present with a certain one, this hypothesis must be assumed. For if A is with no B, but C with a certain B, A will not be with every C. If then this is false, it is true that A is with a certain B, but when A is with no B, let it be supposed present with a certain one, and let C be assumed present with every B, wherefore it is necessary that A should be with a certain C, but it was with no C, so that it is false that A is with a certain B. If however A is supposed present with every B, the proposition is not demonstrated, but in order to its not being present with every, this hypothesis must be taken. For if A is with every B, and C with a certain B, A is with a certain C, but this was not so, hence it is false that it is with every one, and if thus, it is true that it is not with every B, and if it is supposed present with a certain B, there will be the same things as in the syllogisms above mentioned. It appears then that in all syllogisms through the impossible, the contradictory must be supposed, and it is apparent that in the middle figure, the affirmative is in a certain way demonstrated, and the universal in the last figure. Chapter 14. Of the difference between the ostensive and the deduction to the impossible. A demonstration to the impossible differs from an ostensive in that it admits what it wishes to subvert, leading to an acknowledged falsehood. But the ostensive commences from confessed theses. Both therefore assume two allowed propositions, but the one assumes those from which the syllogism is formed, and the other one of these, and the contradictory of the conclusion. In the one case also, the conclusion need not be known, nor previously assumed that it is, or that it is not. But in the other it is necessary previously to assume that it is not. It is of no consequence, however, whether the conclusion is affirmative or negative, but it will happen the same about both. Now, whatever is concluded ostensively can also be proved per impossible, and what is concluded per impossible may be shown ostensively through the same terms, but not in the same figures. For when the syllogism is in the first figure, the truth will be in the middle, or in the last, the negative indeed in the middle, but the affirmative in the last. When however the syllogism is in the middle figure, the truth will be in the first in all the problems. But when the syllogism is in the last, the truth will be in the first, and in the middle, affirmatives in the first, but negatives in the middle. For let it be demonstrated through the first figure, that A is present with no, or not with every B. The hypothesis then was that A is with a certain B, but C was assumed present with every A, but with no B, for thus there was a syllogism, and also the impossible, but this is the middle figure. If C is with every A, but with no B, and it is evident from these that A is with no B. Likewise, if it has been demonstrated to be not with every, for the hypothesis is that it is with every, but C was assumed present with every A, but not with every B. Also in a similar manner, if C, A, were assumed negative, for thus also there is the middle figure. Again, let A be shown present with a certain B. The hypothesis then is that it is present with none, but B was assumed to be with every C, and A to be with every or with a certain C, for thus the conclusion will be impossible, but this is the last figure. If A and B are with every C. From these then it appears that A must necessarily be with a certain B, and similarly, if B or A is assumed present with a certain C. Again, let it be shown in the middle figure that A is with every B. Then the hypothesis was that A is not with every B, but A was assumed present with every C, and C with every B, for thus there will be the impossible, and this is the first figure. If A is with every C, and C with every B. Likewise, if it is demonstrated to be present with a certain one, for the hypothesis was that A was with no B, but A was assumed present with every C, and C with a certain B. But if the syllogism should be negative, the hypothesis was that A is with a certain B, for A was assumed to be with no C, and C with every B, so that there is the first figure. Also, if in like manner the syllogism is not universal, but A is demonstrated not to be with a certain B, for the hypothesis was that A is with every B, but A was assumed present with no C, and C with a certain B, for thus there is the first figure. Again, in the third figure, let A be shown to be with every B. Therefore the hypothesis was that A is not with every B, but C has been assumed to be with every B, and A with every C, for thus there will be the impossible, but this is the first figure. Likewise also, if the demonstration is in a certain thing, for the hypothesis would be that A is with no B, but C has been assumed present with a certain B, and A with every C. But if the syllogism is negative, the hypothesis is that A is with a certain B, but C has been assumed present with no A, but with every B, and this is the middle figure. In like manner also, if the demonstration is not universal, since the hypothesis will be that A is with every B, and C has been assumed present with no A, but with a certain B, and this is the middle figure. It is evident then that we may demonstrate each of the problems through the same terms, both ostensively and through the impossible, and in like manner it will be possible when the syllogisms are ostensive to deduce to the impossible in the assumed terms, when the proposition is taken contradictory to the conclusion, for the same syllogisms arise as those through conversion, so that we have forthwith figures through which each problem will be concluded. It is clear then that every problem is demonstrated by both modes, viz. By the impossible and ostensively, and we cannot possibly separate the one from the other. End of chapter 14 of book 2. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.